Will you marry me? Daniel's deep voice cut through the noise of the crowded restaurant like a knife. The entire room went silent. Grace froze, her heart thumping so hard she thought it would leap out of her chest. She stared at the tall man kneeling before her, holding out a sparkling silver ring that caught the light. Gasps and whispers spread across the room. Every pair of eyes turned to them. She had only met Daniel once before this night. How could he be asking her this? Grace's hand trembled as she looked from his warm, steady eyes to the ring. Behind her, she felt the sharp, jealous gaze of her best friend Linda, who had set her up on this blind date as a cruel joke. Grace's breath caught. Was this really happening, or was it another twist in Linda's game? Before she could speak, Daniel whispered, "Grace, you deserve better than what happened earlier. Say yes." The crowd waited, holding their breath. Even the music from the live band seemed to fade. Grace's heart raced as she opened her mouth. Then the waiter suddenly bumped a glass and the sharp sound made her jump. She still hadn't given an answer. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on the notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from and how did this story touch you? Now let's dive into it. Just a week earlier, Grace never imagined her life would turn this way. She lived in Enugu in a modest but cheerful apartment painted a soft cream color. At 30, Grace had worked hard to become the head of communications at a growing tech company. Her days were filled with press briefings, deadlines, and a tiny garden she watered every evening. People said she had everything: a good job, a kind smile, and a heart that forgave too easily. But inside she often felt lonely. Linda, her childhood friend, knew this well. Linda had grown bitter over the years, watching Grace's career rise while her own business struggled. On the outside, Linda smiled and teased, but deep down, envy burned like fire. One Friday evening, Linda visited with a wide grin. "Grace, I found the perfect man for you," she said, twirling her braids. "He's rich, handsome, and single. A blind date tomorrow night." Grace's eyes widened. "Linda, you know I don't like surprises." "Trust me," Linda said, her voice sweet as honey. "This one is special." Grace hesitated but finally nodded. She trusted Linda. After all, they had shared secrets since primary school. Saturday came with the sound of rain tapping her window. Grace wore her best green gown and simple sandals. Linda arrived to drive her to the fancy restaurant in Lagos where the blind date was set. On the way, Linda kept smiling too much. Grace noticed but brushed it off. When they entered the restaurant, Grace's stomach tightened. The place glowed with golden lights and the smell of grilled fish. A tall man in a crisp white shirt, Mark, stood up to greet her. At first his smile was charming, but soon his eyes turned sharp. "You're not what I expected," Mark said, his voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Linda said you came from money. But look at you, simple dress, no designer bag." The words hit Grace like a slap. People turned to look. Linda pretended to cough, hiding a sly grin. Before Grace could reply, Mark laughed harshly. "Next time, tell the truth before wasting my time." Grace felt her face burn. Her heart sank. Suddenly, a calm, deep voice came from behind her. "I think you owe this lady an apology." She turned to see Daniel, a tall man with kind eyes, stepping forward. The room fell quiet as he walked closer. Daniel's presence filled the room like a quiet storm. He stood with an easy confidence that made even the waiters pause. His eyes, deep brown and steady, fixed on Mark. "You think insulting a woman makes you a man?" Daniel asked, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through the tension. Mark's smirk faltered. "And you are?" "Someone who knows respect," Daniel replied, his gaze never leaving Mark's. "And you should learn it." A few guests clapped softly. Mark shifted, embarrassed. He muttered something under his breath and sank back into his chair. Grace's chest tightened, half with shock, half with relief. She had never seen anyone defend her like that. Daniel turned to her and gave a gentle smile. "You don't deserve this kind of treatment," he said. "Come, let me take you out of here." Grace glanced at Linda, who sat frozen, her face stiff with fake concern. Grace's heart twisted. Linda, her own best friend, had led her into this. But she swallowed the hurt and followed Daniel outside. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of wet earth after the evening rain. Daniel held the door of his black SUV open for her. "Would you like some fresh air before I take you home?" he asked. "Yes, please," Grace whispered, her voice barely steady. They drove in silence for a while. The city lights of Lagos glittered against the dark sky. Finally, Daniel broke the quiet. "People like Mark believe money makes them better. They are wrong." Grace turned to look at him. His strong jaw softened when he smiled slightly. "Thank you," she said, her voice small. "I don't even know you, yet you stood up for me." He nodded. "It's just the right thing to do." When he dropped her off, he handed her a simple white card. "Call me if you ever need a friend. Daniel Carter." The name stayed in her mind long after his card disappeared into the night. The next day, Grace sat in her small living room, the morning sun slanting through the curtains. Her phone buzzed. "Linda. Babe, are you okay?" Linda's voice sounded almost too sweet. "I didn't know Mark would act like that." Grace tightened her grip on the phone. "Linda, did you tell him I was from a rich family?" Silence. Then a light laugh. "It was just a little joke. Don't take it too serious." "A joke." Grace's chest ached. "You humiliated me." "Oh, come on," Linda said. "You need to loosen up." Grace ended the call without another word. She sat there for a long time, staring at the white card Daniel had given her. A joke. From her own best friend. Later that evening she dialed the number. "Hello." Daniel's warm voice came through. "It's Grace," she said quietly. "I'm glad you called," Daniel replied. "Would you like to meet tomorrow? My son and I are going to the new bookstore in Surulere. It might cheer you up." "Your son?" Grace asked, surprised. "Yes," he said softly. "I'm a single father." Something about the gentle pride in his voice made Grace's heart skip. The next afternoon, the bookstore smelled of fresh pages and coffee. Daniel arrived with a little boy holding his hand. Noel had bright eyes and a shy smile. "Noel, say hello to Miss Grace," Daniel said. "Hello," the boy said, almost a whisper. Grace knelt to his level. "Hello, Noel." The boy's smile widened. For the first time in days, Grace felt a quiet warmth inside her chest. Just as they were flipping through a picture book, the sky outside darkened. Thunder rumbled and heavy rain began to fall, beating against the glass windows. Daniel looked out, his expression suddenly heavy, as if a memory had struck him hard. Daniel's jaw tightened as the rain drummed harder on the bookstore windows. The cheerful light in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a shadow Grace could not read. Noel pressed closer to his father's side, sensing the sudden change. "Daddy?" the boy whispered. Daniel gave a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's okay, champ," he said, rubbing Noel's back. But Grace noticed the way his fingers lingered, as if he needed the comfort too. Grace leaned forward. "Are you all right?" For a heartbeat, Daniel said nothing. Then he exhaled slowly. "Rain reminds me of a night I can't forget." His voice lowered to a rough whisper. "The night Noel's mother passed." Grace's chest tightened. She had not expected that. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. Daniel nodded, staring at the wet streaks racing down the window. "It was just like this, heavy rain, loud thunder. I promised myself that night I would never let Noel feel unloved or forgotten." Noel looked up at him with wide eyes, then climbed onto his father's lap. Daniel held him close, his face softening. Grace felt a strange pull in her heart, a mix of sadness and admiration. A gentle silence settled over them, broken only by the sound of rain and the rustle of pages. When the rain slowed, Daniel stood and helped Noel into his small raincoat. "Let's get you home before it starts again," he said. Then he turned to Grace. "Would you like a ride back to Enugu? I can drop you at your gate." Grace smiled faintly. "Thank you, but I stay here in Lagos for work. Enugu is where I grew up." Daniel nodded. "Then at least let me take you home. It's getting late." As they drove through the damp streets, Noel soon dozed off in the back seat. The quiet hum of the engine filled the car. Grace found herself telling Daniel about her job, her love for her little garden, and how she often felt like life was passing her by. "You have built something good for yourself," Daniel said, his voice warm. "Don't let anyone make you feel small." His words settled in her like a soft light. They reached her street and Daniel parked. He turned to her, eyes gentle. "Grace, you deserve people who lift you, not tear you down. Don't forget that." Her throat tightened. "Thank you. For everything." Daniel gave a small nod and handed her Noel's drawing, two stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. "Noel made this for you." Grace smiled, her eyes stinging. "Tell him I love it." When Daniel drove away, Grace stood by her gate, the drawing pressed to her chest. For the first time since Linda's cruel prank, she felt seen. But as she entered her flat, her phone buzzed. "Linda again." "Grace," Linda said the moment she picked up, her tone sharp this time. "I saw you leave with that man yesterday." "Who is he?" Grace's brow furrowed. "Why do you care?" "Because," Linda hissed, People are already talking. You should be careful with strangers. Grace's heart pounded. Linda, you've done enough. Stay out of my life. You think you're better than me now? Linda snapped. We'll see who laughs last. The line went dead. Grace stared at her phone, her heart sinking. She barely had time to gather her thoughts when a loud, sharp knock pounded on her door. The sound echoed through the quiet evening, making her flinch. The pounding on the door came again, louder this time. Grace's heart raced. She clutched Noelle's drawing against her chest as if it could shield her. Who is it? She called, her voice unsteady. Silence. Then a man's voice, deep but unfamiliar. Delivery. Grace hesitated. She hadn't ordered anything. Still, the knock sounded again, firm and urgent. She slowly turned the key and cracked the door. A young courier in a bright yellow raincoat stood there, holding a neatly wrapped package. Rainwater dripped from his hood. For Miss Grace Obi, he said, checking the name tag. That's me, she replied cautiously. He handed her the package and disappeared down the stairwell before she could ask who sent it. Grace locked the door and set the package on the small dining table. Her fingers trembled as she untied the twine. Inside lay a white box with a single sheet of paper on top. It read, "You think you're smart. But you can't hide from the truth. See." Grace's breath caught. Her hands grew cold. Linda. Beneath the note was a small photo of her and Daniel at the bookstore that afternoon, Noelle holding her hand. Grace's stomach turned. Someone had followed them. A knock came from her phone, Daniel calling. She answered quickly. Hello. Grace, are you okay? His voice carried a sharp edge. I need to tell you something important. It's about your friend Linda. Her heart skipped. Linda? What about her? I just received an anonymous email, Daniel said slowly. It had a photo of us at the bookstore, and a warning. The sender claimed you were using me for money. Grace's knees weakened. Daniel, I swear I know, he cut in gently. I don't believe it. But it means someone is watching us. Grace sank onto a chair, the note still trembling in her hand. She sent me a package. The same photo, and a threat. Daniel exhaled, his voice firm now. Lock your doors. I'm coming over. No, Grace began, but he had already ended the call. 10 minutes later, his black SUV pulled up outside. Daniel stepped out, umbrella in hand, his face set in quiet determination. Noelle was not with him. I left him with a neighbor, he explained as she opened the door. I couldn't risk bringing him here. Grace showed him the note. Daniel's eyes darkened as he read it. This isn't just jealousy. She's crossing a dangerous line. Tears stung Grace's eyes. She was my best friend. Daniel crouched beside her. Sometimes the people closest to us hurt us the most. But we won't let her scare you. Thunder cracked outside, rattling the windows. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. It's Linda, he said, holding up the screen. She's calling me. Grace's heart lurched. How does she even have your number? Daniel's jaw tightened. Let's find out. He answered the call. Linda's voice came through, sharp and cold. You think you've found someone better, Grace? You think you can just replace me? Linda, what is wrong with you? Grace cried, her voice shaking. Linda laughed bitterly. You've always acted like the good one. But you can't hide from everyone forever. Daniel will know the truth soon enough. What truth? Daniel demanded. Linda's tone turned sly. Ask Grace about the secret she's been keeping. Then you'll see if you still want to protect her. The line went dead. Grace felt the room spin. Daniel looked at her, his eyes searching. What secret is she talking about? He asked softly. Before Grace could answer, a loud crash sounded from outside the apartment, glass shattering somewhere in the corridor. The sound of breaking glass ripped through the corridor like a gunshot. Grace jumped to her feet, her pulse pounding in her ears. Daniel moved first, pulling her gently behind him. Stay here, he whispered, his voice low but firm. No, she said, clutching his arm. Don't go out there alone. He gave her a steady look. I just want to see what happened. Lock the door behind me. Before she could protest again, he stepped into the hallway. Grace's fingers trembled as she turned the key, her breath shallow. Every creak of the building seemed louder now. Daniel's footsteps echoed down the corridor, then stopped. Grace, his voice came back, calm but tight. It's a flower pot. Someone smashed it near the staircase. Relief washed over her for a moment, but it didn't last. Why would anyone break a flower pot in the middle of the night? Daniel returned and locked the door behind him. It could be random, he said, though his eyes showed doubt. Grace hugged herself. Linda? Daniel put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll handle Linda. But first, tell me what she meant about a secret. Grace's throat went dry. A part of her wanted to hide it forever. But Daniel's steady gaze gave her courage. When I first started my job, she began quietly, Linda helped me. She even lent me money for rent. I promised to pay her back. I did, every naira. But one day she asked for more. I couldn't give it. She grew angry. She said she would make sure no man ever trusted me. Daniel's eyes softened. That's not a secret to be ashamed of. She made it sound worse, Grace whispered. She told people I was ungrateful, that I use men for money. I've lost friends because of it. Daniel reached for her hand. Her lies don't define you. Grace's eyes brimmed with tears, but before she could speak, Daniel's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Linda. It was a text message from an unknown number. Check the balcony. Daniel's brow furrowed. He held the phone for Grace to see. Her heart leapt. What if it's her? Daniel stepped cautiously toward the balcony door. He slid it open just enough to peer outside. Cool night air rushed in. On the small balcony table lay a single white envelope, damp from the evening mist. Daniel picked it up and shut the door quickly. Grace stood beside him, her chest tight. He opened the envelope. Inside was a folded sheet of paper. No name, no signature. It read, If you want this to stop, meet me tomorrow night by the old bridge in Surulere. Come alone. Grace gasped. Her stomach knotted. Daniel's jaw tightened. This is getting out of hand. Grace gripped the edge of the table. She wants me to come alone. She expects you to be scared, Daniel said, his voice steady but laced with anger. But you won't be alone. Before Grace could reply, a sudden heavy thud sounded against the front door, louder and sharper than the earlier knock. Someone was outside trying the handle. The door rattled as if someone was forcing it. Grace's breath caught in her throat. Daniel stepped forward at once, his body tense like a shield. Stay behind me, he whispered. Another hard thud. The handle jerked violently. Daniel moved silently to the side of the door, his phone already in his hand. He quickly dialed the estate security number and spoke in a low voice. Grace clutched Noelle's drawing, her fingers shaking. Her mind raced. Was Linda really outside? Seconds stretched like hours until a loud male voice called from the corridor. Madam Grace. It's security. Someone reported noise. Are you all right? Daniel looked through the peephole, then unlocked the door halfway. Two uniformed estate guards stood there, their flashlights cutting through the dark hallway. Sir, we found nobody, one of them said. But this was lying near the stair rail. He held out a small brown envelope. Grace took it with trembling hands. Inside was a single photo, the same one of her and Daniel at the bookstore. Across it, written in red marker, tomorrow. Or everyone will know. The guards promised to patrol the building all night and left. Daniel closed the door and turned to Grace. His jaw was set, his eyes stormy. She's trying to frighten you, he said. But we won't let her win. Grace sat heavily on the couch. This is my best friend, Daniel. We grew up together. How did we get here? He crouched in front of her. Sometimes people we love can let envy eat them alive. But her choices are hers, not yours. Grace swallowed hard, tears pricking her eyes. What if she ruins me? My job, my name. Then we face it together, Daniel said firmly. I won't let you fight alone. His words settled deep inside her like a warm light, steady against the storm of fear. The night dragged on. Daniel stayed, sitting near the door like a quiet guard while Grace dozed fitfully on the couch. Just before dawn, her phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. Old Bridge. 8 p.m. Don't be late. Daniel read it, his brow tightening. She wants to scare you into coming. But I'll be there too. Hidden if I must. Grace nodded weakly. I just want it to end. As daylight spilled across the curtains, Daniel's own phone rang. It was a video call from Noel, his sleepy little face filling the screen. Daddy, Noel said, rubbing his eyes, when are you coming home? Daniel's voice softened. Soon, champ. I'm with Miss Grace. She needed my help. Noel grinned shyly. Hi, Miss Grace. Despite the night's tension, Grace smiled and waved. Hi, Noel. Daniel ended the call and turned back to her. You see, even when the world tries to scare us, there is still love and goodness. Don't let Linda's darkness steal that. Grace felt her chest tighten, not with fear this time but with something deeper. That evening, as the sun bled orange across the Lagos sky, Grace and Daniel stood near the old bridge in Surulere. The air smelled of rain and rust. Shadows stretched long across the cracked concrete. "You're not going alone," Daniel whispered, staying hidden behind a rusted iron beam. Grace stepped forward, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. From the far end of the bridge a figure appeared, slim, familiar. Linda. Her face was half hidden under a scarf, but Grace would know that walk anywhere. Linda stopped a few feet away, her voice cold. "You came." Grace forced her chin up. "Why are you doing this?" Linda's eyes glinted in the dim light. "Because you took everything that should have been mine. The job. The respect. Even him." She nodded toward the shadows where Daniel hid. Grace's breath caught. "Daniel?" Linda's smile turned sharp. "Do you think I didn't see how he looks at you?" Before Grace could speak, Linda pulled something from her bag. A phone, its screen already recording. "You will beg me to stop," Linda hissed, stepping closer. "Or tomorrow, everyone will know exactly what I want them to believe about you." A sudden metallic scrape echoed behind Linda. Daniel stepped out of the shadows, his tall frame blocking the fading sunlight. "Enough," he said, his voice steady but filled with quiet power. "This ends now." Linda spun around, eyes wide. "You." Daniel took a slow step forward, his gaze fixed on hers. "Grace is not yours to hurt. Not tonight. Not ever." He reached into his pocket. Linda's face hardened, expecting a threat. But Daniel knelt on one knee. Grace's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. The dying light glinted off a silver ring. "Grace," Daniel said, his voice firm yet tender, "marry me. Let everyone hear and everyone who ever doubted you, see how precious you are." For a heartbeat, the bridge fell into utter silence. Only the faint sound of water below and Grace's pounding heart. Linda's mouth fell open, her phone slipping from her fingers as the recording continued. For a heartbeat, the city seemed to hold its breath. The traffic hum from the main road faded, leaving only the rush of the lagoon beneath the old bridge. Daniel remained on one knee, the diamond ring catching the faint glow of the bridge's streetlight. Linda's mouth opened, but no words came out. She stepped forward, her eyes darting between the ring and Grace's stunned face. This is a joke, right?" she stammered. Daniel didn't move. "It's no joke." His voice was calm but firm. "Grace, you've shown me a kind of strength I've never known. You've cared for people, even those who hurt you. You've been a light in a season when I was drowning. Please say yes." Grace's heart raced. She could barely feel her feet on the ground. The world spun. Linda's wide eyes, the ring's glitter, the river's quiet whisper. Linda's voice cracked like dry wood. "Daniel, you just met her. She's nothing like you think. You don't know the full story." Daniel turned his gaze to Linda, steady as stone. "I know enough. I know her heart. And that's more than enough for me." Linda's face flushed. "You can't. This was supposed to be a blind date joke. She wasn't meant to." "Enough." Daniel's voice rang out, startling even Grace. "You've had your fun. But you don't get to control how our lives unfold." Grace felt a tear slip down her cheek. Her chest tightened. She looked at Linda, who now seemed smaller, her shoulders hunched as though the night's weight had finally found her. "I never wanted it to end like this," Linda muttered, her eyes wet. "I just wanted you to notice me, Grace. To remember that we used to be best friends. You forgot me when you started your new job. I was jealous." The confession pierced Grace deeper than any insult could. She took a small step forward. "Linda, you could have just told me. I would have listened." Linda shook her head. "I didn't know how, so I made it a game. But it went too far." Daniel stood and slid the ring back into its box without a word. He didn't pocket it, just held it loosely, giving the two women space. Grace's voice softened. "Linda, we both made mistakes. I should have checked on you more. But hurting someone isn't the way to heal." Linda wiped her face, her shoulders trembling. "I know. I'm sorry, Grace." For a long while, the only sound was the ripple of water below. Daniel finally spoke, his voice gentle now. "Forgiveness is a gift. Give it if you can, Grace." Grace looked at Linda, then back at Daniel. Slowly she nodded. "I forgive you, Linda." Linda's tears flowed freely. She whispered, "Thank you," before quietly turning and walking into the darkness of the bridge's end. Daniel stepped closer, his eyes still soft. "I meant what I said, Grace. I want you by my side, not because of this moment but because of the kindness you carry every day. Will you think about it?" Grace looked at him, at the man who had chosen compassion over spectacle, patience over pressure. Her heart steadied. "Yes," she said quietly. "I'll think about it." Daniel smiled, a warm, unhurried smile. He slipped the ring box into his coat pocket and offered his hand. Grace took it. Together they walked toward the waiting city lights, the night air cool against their faces. Behind them, the bridge stood silent, holding the echoes of jealousy, forgiveness, and a love that had only just begun.